Hello, hello, Jordan Sheridan live. It is Thursday, July the 6th, 2023. Hope everybody's having a lovely day in the United Corporations of America. Had a nice holiday, 4th of July. I spent 4th of July with some family and my newborn. It was a monsoon here in the tri-state area. And it is now unbearable to walk outside. I'm assuming it is pretty damn hot wherever you are. So, just that small thing of the hottest temperature on record on planet Earth on Monday, I think in 125 years. And then the following day was hotter. You would kind of think this would be a pretty big story to cover, that we're having record heat waves. No, not just, oh, it's summer and it's hot, but across the world. But that's not what I've been seeing covered in recent days. So we're going to get into that. Also, Biden's polling numbers not looking so hot, getting worse, shall we see? So we'll get into that and then take your calls because I want to hear from you. Smash that like button right under the video. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this very live stream. Very, very helpful. Super chats, always appreciated. We could use the support. The last trip that Tina did to Atlanta, we still have some footage from there that we're going to be publishing. Also have a video that we believe is going to be going up on Breaking Points either tomorrow or this weekend. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully get more eyeballs to the reporting we've been doing down in Georgia to stop Cop City. Thank you to those who donated for that trip. We did not meet our fundraising goal, so still time if you want to chip in to help us offset the costs for that trip, which were many. And we're working on plans for some other trips too, but we definitely need to beef up our funding. Particularly, I'll get into it a little bit later, but unfortunately, we've had to make some cuts, not because we're failing or anything like that, but just because with independent media, as conditions change, you either spend more than you're taking in and go belly up bankrupt, or go leaner. So we've had to go a little bit leaner, which is in a way good, some bad, but we'll get into it a little bit later when we have more of an audience on some of the cuts we've had to unfortunately make, but nothing that's going to stop us from going on the ground or anything like that. So again, smash the like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to more people. In a few minutes, we're going to have somebody from Climate Defiance, which is the climate group that's been pretty rowdy in recent weeks and months, shutting down a lot of events, including Joe Manchin, shutting down speeches from people in the Biden administration. We're going to have somebody on to talk about the just really, if you ask me, scary temperature changes and what that means for our all survival here on planet Earth. So before we bring him on, let me just give you the basics here. This was a couple days ago. Why a sudden surge of broken heat records is scaring scientists. Scientists say to brace for more extreme weather and probably a record warm 2023 amid unprecedented temperatures. A remarkable spate of historic heat is hitting the planet, raising alarm over looming extreme weather dangers and an increasing likelihood that this year will be Earth's warmest on record. New precedents have been set in recent weeks and months, surprising some scientists with their swift evolution. Historically warm oceans with North Atlantic temperatures already nearing their typical annual peak. Unparalleled low sea ice levels around Antarctica, where global warming impacts had until now been slower to appear, and the planet experiencing its warmest June ever charted, according to new data. And then on Monday came Earth's hottest day in at least 125,000 years. Tuesday was hotter. Let that sink in. Kind of a small news item. The hottest day on the planet in 125 years. I barely saw it even mentioned. Don't want to disrupt from, focusing on who brought the cocaine into the White House. But I digress. So Monday was the hottest day in over a century, and then Tuesday was even hotter. Quote, "We have never seen anything like this before," said Carlo Buontempo, director of Europe's Copernicus Climate Change Service. He said, "Any number of charts and graphs on Earth's climate are showing quite literally that we are in uncharted territory. No shock that global warming is accelerating. Scientists were anticipating that would come with the onset of El Nino, the infamous climate pattern that reemerged last month. It is known for unleashing surges of heat and moisture that trigger extreme floods and storms in some places and drought and fires in others. But the hot conditions are developing too quickly and across more of the planet to be explained solely by El Nino. Records are falling around the globe many months ahead of El Nino's peak impact, which typically hits in December and sends global temperatures soaring for months to follow." You know, we wouldn't want to be bothered covering this in the mainstream media because it won't get ratings. Well, that's great. Considering, I don't know about you, right now it's too hot to walk my dog. It's definitely too hot to walk my daughter, who's about to be 8 months old and doesn't do so well in normal heat, much less record heat. Yesterday, we actually had her baby naming ceremony. If you're Jewish, there's a Hebrew naming ceremony. I did it for my parents. But we had her baby naming Hebrew name, which very nice, beautiful. Just literally walking from the car into the synagogue, I was drenched with the humidity and the heat here. It was unbearable. And no, to the climate deniers, it's not, oh, it's summer, so it's hot. It was the hottest day in 125 years on Monday, and then hotter on Tuesday. I want to show this, and we're going to be joined by a guest in a minute. 41 million people in the U.S. may be exposed to dangerous heat today. 41 million. And look at this heat map. Miami and Tampa are in the dangerous area. Parts of Texas, dangerous. Where Colin is in Texas, extreme caution. Right? San Diego and Phoenix, dangerous. Most of the East Coast, extreme caution, borderline dangerous. I don't know about you, Colin. I kind of feel like this isn't a minor development. Where I am, it feels like 100 with the humidity. I don't know about you. I know most of
We've gotten I think our peak was 132 with humidity and all that.
Yes, and by the way,
we haven't had AC for 3 weeks now.
Oh, you still don't have AC?
Oh, no.
Jesus Christ. And by the way, it's not so easy to be a reporter on the ground when it's so hot. Tina, God bless her, and John were rummaging around last week in Atlanta. She was saying with the humidity, it felt like 120 degrees, and they were outside all day trying to bring you the news, trying to cover the stories no one else is. But you would think, I don't know. I'm not a filmmaker. I think David Sirota and all the people attached to Don't Look Up did a great job. The cognitive dissonance between the hottest temperatures in over a century and that not kind of deserving wall-to-wall coverage, maybe questioning, what are we going to do behind tax incentives, which was the Inflation Reduction Act, which Biden, who virtue signals about being, a climate president, is basically doing more than Trump did in terms of drilling on public lands, is a mother fracker, just like Obama and Trump. You would think this would be kind of covered because, yes, the news studios are kind of air conditioning, but the $1 million anchors walking outside, they're feeling the heat. Well, actually, no, because most of them actually get brought to and from the studio in nice cars, so they only feel the heat for a short while before going into their nice air conditioning cars. But if you wouldn't have known that we are seeing an unprecedented century record heat, you probably wouldn't know because the media is more focused on something much, much more important. Colin, if you could show that.
It's down near the Situation Room, right off West Executive, down below. And normal people, average people just can't get in there, even with the entry from the Northwest Gate.
The cocaine container found inside the White House has undergone multiple tests for fingerprints and DNA. Officials still have yet to identify a suspect and warn there is a possibility they may never find the culprit.
Kelly O'Donnell reports that it's possible that we might not even get to learn who actually brought this small baggie is. So I'm sure that's a sigh of relief to whoever sort of made the boneheaded move of bringing a bag of cocaine to the White House. But because this was in a, not an area that, is highly trafficked, but wasn't necessarily covered by cameras all that well.
Turning now to the investigation at the White House after a small bag of cocaine was found inside the West Wing. NBC's chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander is here with the very latest on this. Peter, we know that this substance now officially came back positive for cocaine yesterday. So what will the investigation focus on now?
If the Secret Service determines who brought the cocaine into the White House, does the White House support the prosecution of this individual?
I'm just not going to get into hypotheticals from here. Let the Secret Service do their job. It's under their purview. We are confident that they'll get to the bottom of it. I'm just not going to get ahead of this right this time. Okay.
So, by the way, that was just a small little snippet. I asked Colin to find clips like 20 minutes before the show. This was literally wall to wall on all the networks. I mean, listen, I've never done cocaine. I've done plenty of weed. Maybe it was Biden's. Who knows which Biden? I don't know. But the culprit, we need to look into the culprit, have an investigation. They're showing maps on TV of the White House room it was found. Are you fucking kidding me? Nobody could walk outside. You can't walk your dog. The poor animals that are outside in this heat. The climate refugees that we already have are going to be accelerating. You hear them saying this is going to be the hottest year on record. The ice caps are melting. Look to what's going on in Greenland, and we're talking about cocaine. Joining me now for to bridge the cognitive dissonance, Teddy Ogborn. You're with Climate Defiance, who's been doing great work trying to shut things down. You guys have interrupted. Manchin was going to do an interview a couple weeks ago. You guys shut that down. You've shut down events with people in the Biden administration and several others trying to kind of, wave the blinking red lights here and disrupt business as usual. But I wanted to have you on. I know that it's not a sexy topic, but maybe it will get sexier when, the fire is burning the mainstream media's home. But I wanted you on because this isn't like, the hottest day in 10 years in over a century.
Yeah, and actually by some metrics, that's just when we started measuring, really. We're looking at 125,000 years record-breaking weather on the 4th of July, which I think is all too apt for reasons I think probably a lot of your viewers understand, which we can get into. But yeah, it is absolutely appalling. And you're right to highlight the fact of, climate refugees that we're already seeing, and also people that are dying on the spot where they've grown up in countries around the world, closer to the equator, places that are seeing these heat domes. Hundreds of people died in Mexico about a week ago because of climate change. And I need to train myself also. Every time I say that, it's not enough because of climate change, because of billionaires, because of fossil fuels. And that's why those people are dying. And we can't say it enough. We have to say it until it stops.
Yeah. We should also point out, I've covered it on the road. People who, just go state to state. You have an unprecedented homelessness problem. And there's stereotypes about homeless people that are not true. But at the end of the day, it is not safe to be outside in these temperatures for that long, much less living outside. And most cities and municipalities do a terrible job of sheltering homeless people, providing safe shelters for homeless people, providing mental health services. So they end up back on the streets, and they're basically out on the streets, dehydrated, and in life or death situations, the hotter it gets. So you have that. Obviously, there's a lot of other problems when it's not safe to be outside. People have been affected, immune systems weakened by COVID over the last few years. So these kind of temperatures are very unsafe. And that's why I was not doing pom-poms. I don't know about you, when we got this media narrative to do jumping jacks for the Inflation Reduction Act for tax incentives that would have been nice 15 years ago. Your thoughts?
It's too little, too late. And anything is better than nothing. And the Biden administration can accurately tout that they've done more for climate than prior administrations because the bar is so fucking low, right? And that's not something that it matters to talk about. Sure, do more because people are dying in the hundreds, in the thousands, sometimes in the tens of thousands when you have the flooding in Nigeria that was happening. I mean, that was absolutely appalling and a direct result from climate change. And you bring up homelessness. Of course, I'm here in Brooklyn, New York, where of course this is a major issue, right? And the issue isn't that people are homeless. The issue is that we have enough resources to provide homes for them, to provide education for people that need it, to provide food. And it is going in the pockets of billionaires. It's going in the pockets of fossil fuel billionaires. That's the phrase that I just can't get out of my head when I do the work that I do is there is enough, right? People pretend that what we're up against, sometimes they pretend that what we're up against is an issue of scarcity. Somehow we live in a world where there's just not enough food. Don't throw away your food after dinner. What about this poor kid? No, we simply do have enough we have the technology to solve this climate crisis. We have the funds to do so. I mean, we're the richest country in the history of the planet. If you're measuring wealth by cash dollars. We have everything that we need to solve these crises that are killing people, right? That should be where it stops, is the point where something that is fixable is killing people, and yet we are not doing it. So it's a question of reallocation. That is all that we're demanding. We're not demanding that someone waves a magic wand and creates a solution that isn't there. It is all there, and people are so stubborn, pulling on their end of the rope or whatever, because they want to buy another yacht, because they want to go on the private jet to the Hamptons, etc. So that's just something that keeps me going in the work. There is enough. We just have to move it. We have to make people move it.
And let me ask you, obviously, there's been a lot of deflected people on the left, people disappointed with the progressives in Congress, many of them who kind of ran on a Green New Deal, obviously AOC. It's not all on them, but at the end of the day, this would be a good opportunity for them to be kicking and screaming. All I really see are some tweets here and there. It's kind of hot to protest right now, but are we seeing enough? Do you think, obviously, climate defiance isn't waiting for politicians to come in, but do you see enough coming from AOC, fellow progressives, people who ran on environmental justice, climate justice? Because these are the times when everyone, not even especially the people who aren't into politics, who kind of are not paying attention, but they're being affected. This is the time to message to those people and try and get more people involved. But I don't really see any form of organizing going on outside of yours and a few other select groups.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be enough until we can safely raise our children and we have, solutions to this crisis. I don't care what you're saying, even if it is more than a tweet, even if you're introducing the bill, right? You are not doing enough until the thing is solved. That's my opinion. And so that is why we are constantly pushing, right? So I work with Climate Defiance a lot. I also organize with New York Communities for Change, and I organize with Reclaimer Tomorrow, both New York-based groups. New York Communities for Change is a very storied group working at the intersection of income inequality and climate change. And I mentioned the Hamptons earlier. Last year, I went to the Hamptons with them, and we had a campaign. We were there for a full week disrupting luxury emissions and the wealthy New Yorkers that are summering there in the Hamptons, because they're killing us for business and they're killing us for pleasure, right? The wealthiest 1%, or the wealthiest 10%, I should say, emits 50% of lifestyle emissions. It's the inverse. For the bottom 50%, they only emit 10% of those emissions, right? And of course, that places like that are replete with fossil fuel billionaires and politicians and Biden administration advisors that are making the problem worse and profiting directly off of it, right? So, we're going straight to the people that are causing this crisis and killing us, and you have a really powerful action there. You have a really powerful campaign that's ongoing, by the way, where in the Hamptons you have some of the poorest people in New York City, people of color, many of them who are immigrants, who are taking the time to fight for themselves and their children up against the wealthiest people in New York City who are there summering in the Hamptons. And I think you cannot better distill the class struggle and the climate crisis and the Venn diagram that's like that than actions like those. And I can't say too much, but rest assured, we're going to be back there.
And, talk about, obviously, you have the latest, the cocaine gate, which I don't really give a shit about. The media is fixated on 2024, a year and a half before the election, Trump's multiple indictments, and all the other distractions. What can you do beyond just disrupting events, which obviously gets media attention, but, they'll just up security or, what are some of the strategies that your group and others should do? Because, I'm not a climate scientist or anything, but it's probably going to get worse given that what the article was talking about in terms of El Nino has not even started yet, and we're seeing these temperatures.
Right. Well, I'll say first this, Jordan, don't count out disruption, because right now it is really, I think, capturing the attention of folks. I think, especially what Climate Defiance is doing, what NYCC has been doing really well for a long time and continues to do. It does because you have people whose lives, they're on the front lines of this climate crisis, and they're our neighbors here in New York, and people don't hear about them. And I think it really is disruptive actions like those, I think, really is busting through to the media. And we are getting also lots of people who are on the inside of government, yes, members of the squad, they can and should be doing more, but we're also talking to them because, let's face it, they are, within that realm, a radical flank that, I think is proposing solutions that often are getting shot down when they are solutions, right? So, but we also, disruptions, they are an escalation, right? And it's not the top of the steps. I think there's a lot more that can and should be done. That's the tactic that I think is really capturing people's attention right now. And it is, I'll say it again, I think I said it last time we chatted, it's hard to get a lot more direct than that outside of laying down in front of a bulldozer. You're going straight to the people that are making those decisions, right? But look, I think if people were to this is really nice, actually, that the film How to Blow Up a Pipeline exists, because I can say, well, in this fictional film, right? But in this fictional film, people blow up a pipeline in Texas, people who have disparate reasons for doing so. So one of them has cancer, I think, from growing up near fossil fuel refineries. Others folks are being displaced by it, or they're losing money because of it, or they're just really impassioned because they care about everyone they know and everyone that they don't. And they choose to blow up a pipeline, which some people consider an act of violence. I don't think blowing up infrastructure is violence. I think, you can't do violence to property. It's a thing, right? That's my opinion. But that, I think, is a form of escalation that you can, and they do in the film, describe as self-defense, right? Like I said, these people, these policies, they are killing us. It is not like an indirect thing. It's like you can't trace where it comes from. We can trace exactly where climate change comes from. We know, as Exxon knew as soon as, over 50 years ago, and buried it, right? So I think it's an act of self-defense to escalate in the face of climate change, right? And I think it's perfectly apt. And you're going to continue to see, I think, people take escalated actions and defend themselves in our broken legal system, but still attempt to defend themselves in that system by saying, we deserve a future. Yeah, there's that case in Montana where a group of young children they're suing the state for not protecting, according to the state's constitution, they're not protecting the natural environment where those children expect to grow up in and raise their own children. And so they're just suing the state. It's the furthest anything like that has gone. So I really think we're going to see escalations like this, whether that is legally, whether that is in terms of protest tactics. Because listen, if someone's coming at you with a knife, you don't call your mayor, right? You disarm them. you take care of yourself, you take care of your family.
And a local question, but Christina, thanks for the super chat, lives on Long Island, wants to know how to get involved with Climate Defiance.
Yeah, for sure. You can go to climatedefiance.org and sign up via the Action Network link that you'll find there. And because I kind of tend to field those, I'll just remember I'll writing your name now, writing your name down now, and we'll be in touch. Thanks so much for reaching out. That's amazing.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more events disrupted, particularly on the campaign trail, because obviously the media can't resist any campaign stories. So the bigger, the better. And yeah, people might have to start chaining themselves to some bulldozers, because at the end of the day, I see there's always going to be some kind of schmucks that, temperatures change in the history of the world. This is nothing to worry about. And just don't get it. But it's not normal every single year to have hotter temperatures than the next. Certainly not normal for those hotter temperatures on consecutive days, you have the hottest temperatures ever. There are conditions where it's too hot to go outside and be healthy, be safe, just like there are conditions where it's too cold to go outside for a long period of time. Well, we've had the cold, North Dakota, other places, obviously around the world too. But we're getting to the point where it's not sustainable to do work outside or protest for long. I mean, my reporter was just in Atlanta on camera. I could tell she was struggling just to talk because she was so hot with the heat. It was like 115 degrees. And everybody's different. So some people can deal with heat better than others. So this is now no longer like a theoretical thing. People are dealing with it right here in America, not to mention, the smoke we've been dealing with for the last few weeks. It's not as bad here on the East Coast as it was 3 weeks ago, but I'm still getting air alerts almost every other day from the Canadian wildfires. So your last thoughts on all this before you go.
Yeah, I mean, to zoom out a lot, the philosopher Timothy Morton, who writes around ecology, who I really appreciate, they write that the climate is a hyperobject, and that or climate change is a hyperobject rather, and that the intricacies, the entanglement of all the issues that we're facing, it's not something that you can comprehend in its totality at one time, and that's why it's so hard to tell this story, and that's why denialists or delayists find it so easy to do their job. Which is so I don't think it's our job to tell the whole story at once, but you got to at least fucking tell parts of it whenever it comes up. And it is part of our daily lives now, right? So the media is totally underreporting it. As activists, we need to be really specific and targeted. And that's what I'm excited about. And that's what we've been doing, right? So that's to understand that there's this really big, incomprehensible thing that's happening to, billions of people around the globe, affecting many, many people, more so than myself right now. But to know that there is one thing I can do next week to try and affect change, that's really, really important. So thanks so much for having me on, Jordan. I want to say, I mentioned there's the Climate Defiance website where you can sign on. Listen, if there are local people to New York and you want to get involved in some things I may or may not be working on soon, I'll give my email. I don't mind. I'm teddy.ogborn@gmail.com. You can reach out to me directly there, and I'd be happy to be in touch.
Cool. We'll put it in the description. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate you jumping on.
Take care. Thanks for having me on.
So, I felt we should start with that. Obviously, these are not the topics that go viral or get a big audience partly because of algorithms that don't actually elevate these topics. But I really can't think of anything more important than kind of living or dying. And I've been doing journalism for 10 to 15 years. And every single year, it's getting worse in terms of the temperatures. It's getting worse in terms of the unprecedented storms. It's getting worse in terms of the areas that don't typically have these kinds of storms. Obviously, drought in many parts of the world, climate refugees. And honestly, a big reason that all of this continues to get worse is we have a media in bed with politicians who would rather focus on their short-term profits and gravy train than the rest of us, because all these politicians are going to be long gone when we're going to be dealing with the fire swirling around us and our families. So we'll keep covering the climate. I want to cover latest polls, Biden sinking, and then I'm going to take your calls. So smash that like button, share the live stream. If you want to write down the number now for phone calls, so you can be ready to call. Colin, you can put it up. It's 719-782-8871. So looking forward to taking your calls. Be kind. I haven't been sleeping because of my young, almost 8-month-old daughter. But if you want to fight, we could fight too. 719-782, whatever the rest of that was. 719-782-8871. I'll have a quick announcement in a little bit. But let's show this latest poll, which, boy, Taylor Swift is doing better than a lot of Republicans. So in a three-way, Trump is beating Biden by 2 with Taylor Swift as an option. This is not a joke. They did this at 7%. Then Trump beating Biden by 2% with Andy Cohen from Bravo at 4%. And Trump basically tied up 1, but basically tied with Cornel West at 4%. And I don't know about you. I'm seeing all the articles. Cornel West is a spoiler. Cornel West is a spoiler. Cornel West should run in the Democratic Party, not the Green Party. Obviously, we got a long way to go because Cornel West has to win the Green Party nomination. He's officially now filed as a Green Party candidate. If he wins, it wouldn't be for at least a year. I think the Green Party nomination is in a year. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he campaigns. I still think there's the possibility of more people jumping in the Democratic primary in particular. But the fact of the matter is that Biden, and obviously these polls are early, but the fact that a year or so before the general election starts, Trump is even close to Biden, a 2-time indicted president who oversaw an attempted coup. And yes, that's what it was. Sorry for those that like to pretend it was a walk in the park. Biden should be beating Trump by 10 points minimum. He's losing to Trump in a lot of these polls. And he's doing things that are going to make him lose more of the key voters he needs. It's not only that the polls are not looking good for Biden. The media seems to be looking for a different option by doing slobbering profiles on other potential candidates. I did a video on this earlier, but Politico did this slobbering puff piece on Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, bypassing Biden. Democrats think of what could have been. If you want more on that, check out the video I recorded earlier today, giving you Gretchen Whitmer's real record instead of the puffed up slobbering that the media has done. She's not good. She's been an awful governor, and she is continuing to allow people to be poisoned and die in Michigan. But she's got a good smile and a nice Midwestern twang, right? So the media has been doing pieces ready for Gretchen. There's been more media reports. Maybe Gavin Newsom will jump in. I've even seen stuff about Pete possibly running against Biden. The media wants a close race, and they're beginning to think it might not be the closest of races if it's Biden versus Trump. You also have Biden. This is from Rolling Stone. Biden's Department of Justice is pressuring journalists in helping to build its case against Julian Assange. They are trying to get journalists who have had prior relationships with Julian Assange, have maybe been critical of Julian Assange in the past over different things with WikiLeaks. They're trying to coerce them into testifying against Julian Assange, presumably because their case against Julian Assange isn't actually a case. They don't actually have evidence that he tried to help Chelsea Manning hack anything. Chelsea Manning basically had all the access she needed back in 2010, but they're trying to first, they're approaching certain journalists with, this is a voluntary. It's voluntary for you to talk to us, which I got a call once from the FBI. Whenever they tell you it's voluntary, call a lawyer. So one journalist went on the record and wrote a story exposing it and saying they were not willing to help the Department of Justice. They do have, that journalist has issues with some of the things Assange has done, but does not think that he should be prosecuted over publishing the Afghanistan war logs, the Iraq war crimes that WikiLeaks published, the collateral damage video. So you also have Biden, in addition to trying to railroad Julian Assange, which is turning off, I would say, a good amount of lefties that if it was Trump, if it was DeSantis, would hold their nose and vote for Biden again. Not a huge amount, but there are a good number of that Assange is their one or two issue. And Biden is continuing this. Then he appointed Elliot Abrams, a notorious war criminal, to some like diplomacy board. Elliot Engel, who as of recently was trying to help Trump, not Elliot Engel, Elliot Abrams was trying to help Trump launch a successful coup in Venezuela. Why does Elliot Abrams have anything to do with a Democratic presidency? Couldn't tell you. No idea. In addition, by the way, on Julian Assange, if we could show that tweet, Ben from Ben & Jerry's was arrested today, along with some Code Pink members. He was outside in front of the Department of Justice protesting on behalf of Julian Assange, and he got arrested. So there are things happening still in support of Julian Assange. You have the New York Times and 4 other European outlets came out months ago calling for President Biden to drop these charges. Biden's not dropping them, presumably because he's basically doing the bidding for the military-industrial complex who hates Assange, the CIA, the FBI, DHS, etc. But you're losing young people, lefties, through this prosecution. You might score some points, even though they hate you anyways. You might score some points. You might make them want to hold their nose or be willing to hold their nose and vote for you if you drop these charges, among doing the bare minimum of other things. In addition to railroading Julian Assange, in addition to appointing Elliot Abrams, Biden is now launching this new marketing slogan called Bidenomics. Have you heard this? It's really, really cringe. Bidenomics. So POTUS is heading to South Carolina to unveil investments in clean energy manufacturing that the administration say will create hundreds of good-paying jobs. Oh, I went out of order. Excuse me. Full court press. While much of the potential attention yesterday focused on the GOP presidential hopefuls barnstorming July 4th parades, President Biden and his cabinet were readying to fan out around the country over the next 72 hours, touting Bidenomics as he gears up for re-election. Today, so this was yesterday, according to a schedule, the EPA administrator, Michael Reagan, will kick things off today, traveling to Grand Rapids, Michigan, home of a U.S. House seat Dems flipped in 2020, to tout federal investments in replacing lead pipes. Maybe the head of the EPA, instead of barnstorming the country to lie about how many lead pipes they've replaced, secret. They haven't replaced all the pipes in Flint almost a decade later. And I looked in Grand Rapids. There are no lead pipes to replace. And I talked to some people who have told me if the infrastructure deal was supposed to replace lead pipes, show me where they've been replacing lead pipes. Have they been replacing lead pipes in your community yet? Do the infrastructure deal? It seems very similar to the lowering the price of prescription drugs, which won't actually come into effect until 2026. And we don't actually know the drugs they're lowering the price of. It's all kind of like checklist. Don't worry about the details. Fundraising email. Maybe the head of the EPA should be in East Palestine, actually doing the right thing and helping these people instead of pushing his agency to cover the whole thing up, which we've been reporting they've been covering up. The mini Chernobyl in East Palestine. Maybe he should get his ass to Flint, Michigan, and actually expedite all the pipes to be replaced, including interior home plumbing, a decade after this ongoing crisis. Maybe he should go to Kalamazoo, Michigan, where we've been reporting a multi-billion-dollar packaging company is poisoning a poor black neighborhood, and that toxic gas from Graphic Packaging is now going into the white neighborhood. I could go down the list. Maybe he can go to some Native American reservations who all have such high rates of cancer because of the mining that's done on top of it. But no, he's out campaigning for Bidenomics. Whatever the hell Bidenomics means, I couldn't tell you. POTUS himself is heading to South Carolina to unveil investments in clean energy manufacturing that the administration say will create hundreds of good-paying jobs. Well, I don't want to minimize the clean energy, manufacturing jobs, but we're kind of on a race against time here. If you noticed from the first segment, we're having record temperatures that they say over the hottest day in 125 years. But as Teddy pointed out, this is the hottest days since they started temperatures. So it might be the hottest day period, well beyond 125 years. But he wants to tout clean energy jobs or the tax incentives that they gave in the Inflation Reduction Act for renewables, all shit that would have been nice in 2002, not 2023. Way, way late. But this is Bidenomics. Kamala Harris, we know we want her on the road speaking. And second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, will be in a critical swing state of Arizona, where they'll visit the Gila River Indian community to tout the bipartisan infrastructure laws, water investments in tribal areas. There actually are some good things that were in the infrastructure deal, even though overall it's a massive privatization scheme. There was, resources for water on Native American reservations. There also was expansion of rural broadband. So it's not all terrible, but these are drop in the bucket things to the proportion of the fuck situation we're all in. I won't go through the rest of the list, but the Interior Secretary, the Health Department Secretary, PD is going to be on the road highlighting infrastructure grants. Oh, gotta love those grants. Neoliberalism run amok, dressed up as historic progress. But Biden's sales pitch continues on Friday when the president will pivot to a focus on his work lowering prescription drug prices for seniors and cracking down on junk fees. The real question, are voters even buying what he's selling? This is coming from Politico, the Bible of the Democratic establishment. They're saying, are voters really buying this bullshit? So far, not so much. Despite low unemployment, a rebounding stock market, and wage growth, voters still limping from inflation aren't exactly happy with Biden's economic policies. Only a third of those surveyed in a recent AP Center poll approved of his leadership on the economy. That's precisely why in recent weeks, Republicans, from 2024 hopefuls to congressional leaders, have been positively giddy over the White House's embrace of the one-word catch-all, Bidenomics. Their goal, to ensure Bidenomics is defined by all the negative feelings voters have about the economy, and the GOP is betting that the administration's mission accomplished sentiment will only repel voters who are still struggling. Clearly the Republican Party has been just as guilty in the 40-year neoliberal / social Darwinistic policies that have screwed us all. It's not just the Democratic Party. They're all in it together. Economically, they're all in it together. But you have a president that, because he's he is old, and he's kind of living politically in like the 1990s, he seems to think that times haven't changed and you could still just cite GDP or low unemployment or spruce up some numbers or sprinkle in some bullshit about infrastructure grants and, rinse and repeat neoliberal policy here, work around the corners here, trimming the edges here, and make that sound like historic progress. This was basically how Obama ran in 2012. He's very lucky he was running against Gordon Gekko in Mitt Romney. He's very lucky there was a tape that came out where Gordon Gekko said half of the country are moochers. Remember the 47% tape. This is pretty much how Hillary Clinton ran in 2016 when she was basically running on Obama's record and expanding on the aforementioned neoliberal crumbs. This is basically how Biden ran in 2020. And contrary to the media propaganda, he didn't win as much as Trump really lost. If Trump, in my opinion, would have given another $2,000 check, which according to Trump, Turkey Neck, Mitch McConnell talked him out of doing that. If Trump would have done just a little bit more on COVID, I think he would have won. Trump only lost Wisconsin by, I think it was 20,000 votes. Biden only won Pennsylvania by 80,000 votes. Michigan was about 150,000. These are not massive vote totals that cannot be flipped in the next election. We know on the Republican side, it's, up is down, the sky is green, and give me another indictment. It makes Trump more popular. And DeSantis, no surprise to me, is running a horrible campaign because he's a horrible campaign and kind of a robot when you get him out of his carefully controlled little bubble in Florida where he controls the media. He's bad on the stump. He's awkward. He is going way too far into the culture war, which is only going to bring you too far. And he cannot manipulate and prey on Republican grievance anywhere near to the level that Trump can. But still, Trump is beating Biden in polls and doing nothing to turn it around. Even though the Supreme Court overturned his student loan debt, there's been plenty of reporting out there that there are things Biden can do through existing law on the books or executive action to remove student loan debt. There are emergency actions Biden could take on climate. There is executive actions Biden could take on health. The American Prospect, when Biden first came into the presidency, they came up with a list of 100 executive actions Biden could take. Refuses to do them, citing the legal challenges. Well, the Republicans don't worry about legal challenges. They just do it and worry about the legal challenges after. But Biden seems pretty intent to run on Bidenomics. It really, really reeks of Hillary 2016 to me. Badly reeks of Hillary 2016. And this is not even to mention, honestly, let's not kid ourselves. I'm not telling Cornel West to run in the Democratic primary. I'm totally for him running in the Green Party. But Cornel West, at this point, he's polling between 4 and 6% before he's even really campaigned. He's just filed with the Green Party officially. He's not even formally the Green Party nominee. He's not even on the road yet. He has no ads, no real digital media strategy. If Cornel West gets to 5, 6, 7%, which would be awesome for a third party candidate, that can be the difference. That can pull enough votes from Biden. So Biden's going to have to overcompensate to prevent losing more people to a third party. Part of that is the point of running a third party candidate, to build a third party, to hit that 5% threshold number for more federal funds, to move the Overton window to get more Americans thinking that it's possible to have more than a two-party duopoly, to get more people to actually vote third parties so we could perform better and better and better, and hopefully one day achieve the dream of getting rid of a Democrat or Republican and having a real, populist, progressive president, but also to force the Democrat or Republican to make concessions that we actually can hold them accountable so that they don't lose voters to a third party candidate. That's part of the point of a third party candidacy, to name, shame candidates like Biden, to force them to give concessions to the left, not after they're reelected, but now. Biden's not going to do that because his Wall Street donors won't let him. So I'm not going to make any, firm predictions a year and a couple months early, but I don't think it's looking good. I don't think it's looking good for the Democrats or Biden. They don't have COVID to bail them out. Of course, the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade made a difference in the midterms in helping the Democrats. I don't know if that viscerally will make as big of a difference, 2 years after that decision. Unless the Supreme Court, obviously what they just did with affirmative action and other things, I don't know if that's going to have the same effect of Roe v. Wade. So at this point, unless something really, really changes, I don't really see a major issue galvanizing women, black voters, left voters to hold their nose and vote for Biden because of something the Supreme Court did or something else. Could be wrong. We'll see. So that's that. Before I take your calls, a couple announcements. One, we were just in Cop City, so obviously we still have some content from Tina's trip. We'll be posting that tomorrow and through the weekend. Thank you to everybody who donated. We could still use your donations. We had the goal of 6,000. I think we've raised about 1,500, so obviously failed in hitting our goal, but still definitely accepting help for those that could chip in. So that's statuscoup.com/trip funding. This will also go to our next trip. I talked to Lewis today, so we're coming up with some ideas for his next trip. We want to stay on East Palestine, but also other things that Lewis can cover. I've got some things kind of on my mind possibly to hit the road. And also, there might be a historic UPS strike coming up. Lewis just interviewed a UPS worker yesterday. UPS was given, and workers were giving an insulting offer by UPS. So we're only a few weeks away. They got till August 1st to make a real offer, or you're going to have over 300,000 people on strike. That would be the biggest strike in decades. And I think it could have a domino effect from there if you have over 300,000 workers all over this country on strike. And everyone would feel it if UPS goes on strike because no mail. Well, no mail from one of the biggest carriers. I think it's a little bigger than FedEx. So definitely looking forward to that. I got some other things I want to do on the road, but money is the issue. We need more funding. So definitely, if you're not yet a Status Coup member, consider signing up. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. Sign up as a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. That's how we fund this reporting. And there's realities, which I'm about to get to. We don't have a corporate fat cat donor. We don't have, George Soros or the Koch brother or name your Democratic Party or Republican Party swine or ghoul funding us. It's you. So the blessing with that is it liberates us to cover the stories that matter. The curse is it's really, really hard to afford this on the ground reporting. And as the hosts that we have, obviously we want to pay people a decent wage, but at a certain point, you can't spend more money than you're bringing in. So unfortunately, I won't get into like full details, but unfortunately, Colin can't go on the road anymore. In addition to editing and producing, Colin was going on the road with me, with Lewis, with Tina, which was awesome. He does a great job in studio, but also on the road. He can't go on the road. Nothing bad. He's not dying or anything like that. But he's got obligations at home, so he can't really go on the road for the near future. So that meant I had to find another cameraman. So obviously John Farina has been with us kind of on a freelance basis for 3 years now. But I, not behind the scenes, I would pay John per trip or per day if he's doing a day shoot. So we need a camera person now for every trip since Colin can't do it. So that requires more money. So I worked out a deal with John, but we had to come up with more money to pay John more consistently since he might be doing, 2 on the ground trips per month in addition to, covering protests. He just sent me something that we're going to cover in New York City next week. So it's kind of like, got to find the money so we have a cameraman. And because we didn't get a surge of signups that day, I have to make cuts elsewhere. So unfortunately, the cuts we had to make for the time being, if we grow and, do much better, maybe we could bring some of these people back. But unfortunately, had to cut Kim Brown's show. She was doing a couple times a month. Ron and Tina together. Nothing to do with them. I love all of them. I think they did a great job, and I know the audience likes them. But obviously, we're paying people, and if we have to make cuts to afford a new cameraman, there's just realities behind all this. So between Kim, Ron, Tina, weekly shows, that's a couple $1,000s per month. So Tina, we're still going to have doing her weekly show, but we're not going to have Ron and Tina co-hosting. Unfortunately, Kim not hosting. And again, never, it's see you later, not goodbye. They all understood. It's nothing personal. It's just we make a certain amount per month, and we have X amount of overhead, and it's myself, Colin, Lewis, obviously we're paying. John Farina, the costs of our live view, which is our broadcasting unit, which are fixed costs every month. There's so many costs between marketing and social media and a lot of the other costs we have per month, bookkeeping. I don't bore you with the details behind the scenes, but there's a lot of costs to having a company, particularly an independent company. So yeah, I mean, there were cuts we had to make. Obviously, Colin's kind of my ride or die. He's been with us. He's been with me for basically since I started. Yes, since I started this. So he is not going anywhere. And John, now that we could depend on him for on the ground, I think he does great work. Obviously, he got the historic footage on January 6th. So happy that I could work out something with him. So that's why your membership is so important. It's not, I'm not begging you to become a member just so we could have higher numbers. We need more revenue to afford, to have more hosts. I'm not going to insult people. Hey, do you want to host for free? So that's the deal. Nothing to do. I love Ron. I love Tina. I love Kim. But we had to make cuts, and that's the unfortunate. That's the unfortunate thing. But I said to all of them, if there's stories you're particularly passionate about, and you want to get more eyeballs on it, we'd be happy to post it here on the channel. If there's ever anything you want to come on as a guest. So you'll be seeing Ron, I'm sure. Obviously, Tina is still going to be doing her weekly show. Kim, I'm sure we'll have on as a guest. So we're not saying peace forever. So that's one thing. What else? Oh, tomorrow we should have a video. Tomorrow we should have a video from Cop City on breaking points. So looking forward to that. And yeah, that's all. Colin, did I miss anything? Oh, our store. Go to statuscoup.com/store. We have some new designs in there, including the Poison States of America shirts. I think there's 3 shirts that you can get for our new Poison States of America line, in addition to all the other Status Coup goodies. That's statuscoup.com/store. It's a good conversation starter, and it's another good way for us to make some extra revenue. Rocking our gear. There you go. You got the Poison States design. You could get it pink and black and tan. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Tie-dye. What's in your water? And all our designs are sustainable, by the way. So that's all I got. What are they doing? What is that? What are they doing? Just making money somewhere else? I don't know. I mean, they weren't like full-time employees here, so I can't tell you what they're doing. Ron has his own channel, and obviously he does comedy around the country. Kim, I'm not sure. She does her own channel, Burn It Down with Kim Brown, and I think is with Black Power Media too. She does a morning show with them. I don't know what else she does. And Tina does freelance work elsewhere as well. So that's it. All right. Take your calls about anything, really. Let me get that set up here. Colin, if you could put up the number. Remember, when you're calling in, make sure the actual show is not on, so we're not hearing ourselves back in an echo. Preferably not have me on speaker, because that doesn't sound so great. We could talk about 2024 and a whole. I think I set it up right, Colin? Feel free to call in. There's the number. Let's see. 222. Just don't ever sell out to right wingers. Michael, if I haven't sold out in 7 years, you think I'm going to sell out? Come on now. All right. Soriano, you're up.
Hello, my name is Alvaro Serrano. I'm from Illinois. I have a question for 2024 because I've been looking at polls relating to 2024. I want to know if Joe Biden doesn't do good against RFK or Marianne Williamson, who's like the Democrat establishment are they going to put over Joe Biden? Thank you.
I think they would swoop in Gavin Newsom. I think optically he's relatively young, I guess good looking, depending on what you think. Has done kind of had an extreme makeover as of the last year, doing some progressive things, announcing they're going to manufacture insulin on their own in California to lower the price, among other things. And I think they want a much younger option if it's against Trump or DeSantis, who's obviously in his 40s. So I think it would be Gavin Newsom. I think that some in the Democratic establishment would want it to be Pete, but I think Gavin Newsom matches up well, not on policy, because I don't really like Gavin Newsom, but at least optically in terms of being aggressive enough to go up against Trump or DeSantis. He's done ads on TV going after DeSantis in Florida. He went on Sean Hannity recently and kind of jousted. So I think if it's not Biden, Gavin Newsom would be next in line. Also having the stature as California governor, which has obviously been a launching pad for Reagan, among others. So my guess is it will be Gavin Newsom. Democratic Party certainly ain't going to rally around RFK Jr. Definitely not around Marianne Williamson. If it's not Gavin Newsom, I mean, you would think they would rally around Kamala Harris, but I don't know. I think she's doomed. I think she is. I really can't see the Democratic establishment. I think they will, on paper, optically check the box that it's good. We're supporting Harris, but I think they'll do everything else in the background to prop up Gavin Newsom, is my guess.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Next one up, Nadia.
Well, I think the right is going to sweep 2024 and pretty much do the Handmaid's Tale.
I hope you're wrong. Yeah, honestly, right now feels very similar to me as 2015, 2016, obviously without the exuberance and excitement of like a Bernie campaign, but just in terms of like the final years of Obama and kind of trying to put lipstick on a pig and sell, his economy as historic and try and sell his accomplishments, which I don't think there was a ton of like really historic, game-changing accomplishments. And obviously the country agreed because 10% of Obama voters switched to Trump. And a game show host beat one of the most accomplished, experienced politicians ever, who I also didn't like. But I think there's similar vibes to me as in the final days of Obama.
Well, the fundies and What is Right have been working on taking over for a pretty long time, and the public will want to punish the party in charge for the bad economy.
Yep.
So it's pretty much going to be And they have an agenda too. Their agenda is to have fetal personhood nationally, and to literally outlaw LGBT people nationally, which means mass imprisoning LGBT people, especially trans people being the ones who are easiest to find.
Yep. You know, that's actually one thing. There's two things that I think actually could save Biden and the Democrats. Number one, I mean, obviously anything could happen. I was correct that Trump was going to be prosecuted on the classified documents. A lot of people said, Jordan, you're crazy. I was not crazy. I think he's also going to be indicted in Georgia. And I think there's a good chance he's going to be indicted over January 6th. Let's say there's 3 or 4 indictments. I mean, at the end of the day, Donald Trump, obviously narcissism is his oxygen, but he also, I think he'd sooner kill himself than go to prison. And from the way it looks, I think, at least on the documents, I think the trial is going to begin before the election. And I think Donald Trump, once the kind of narcissism and, megalomaniac wears off,
He'll be barred from office.
He'll
be barred from office.
Right. I think if he's actually
the deep state
at a certain point, his lawyers are going to have to tell him, you're going to lose and you're facing potentially like the rest of your life in prison. I think he would make a deal. Maybe it would involve a slap, like a month in prison and then house arrest or probation for a year or two, but mostly a slap on the wrist, but you can't run. And if that happens, I think DeSantis is running such a shitty campaign. I don't know if all of Trump, I think most of Trump's base would switch to DeSantis, but I think with Trump dropping out, that might be enough of a kind of exciting rallying cry for Democrats, liberals, independent voters to put Biden's dying political carcass over the line. The second thing is, listen, we saw what happened in the midterms when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. People weren't coming out of excitement for Biden. They came out in exit polls. The number one reason people voted for Democrats in numbers that, saved the Senate. The House defeat was not as bad as people expected, was Roe v. Wade. It's possible that something leaks, maybe audio or some plan of Trump or DeSantis or name your right winger, that if they get elected, they're going to push for a national abortion ban. And I believe that could be similar to the midterms, enough of a rallying cry where you'd get obviously big number of women out, obviously independents, even independents that swing towards Republicans, but that's too extreme for them. And they would vote on that one issue. So I don't know what form it would come in. I think Trump has been pretty smart and has tried to avoid the subject because he knows it's a loser. DeSantis, not so much. But if there's something that comes out where one of these candidates would try and push a national ban, I think that could save Biden. Other than that, I think he doesn't have COVID anymore to give him an excuse not to campaign. If he doesn't go out on the road and campaign, I think that's going to hurt him too. And I really think the fact that they're not holding a Democratic primary is going to hurt him too, because a lot of people who would hold their nose and vote for him, even though they don't like him, but do it to avoid Trump and DeSantis, are going to be pretty turned off by the fact that there's no competition on the Democratic side. And, we'll see what happens with Cornel West.
They're going to have the primary regardless of who they choose.
Right.
They may dump Biden just because they want to try to win, and they'll still lose.
Listen, if they dump Biden, it might happen.
Whatever.
If they dump Biden, my guess is it would happen closer to the Democratic convention, so that all the primary states were pretty much done, and they could swoop in like a Gavin Newsom, or I really think they would find a way to screw Kamala Harris, but do it kind of behind the scenes. So claim that they're going with Kamala, but at the last moment, swoop in Gavin Newsom. But you're playing with fire too.
Well, the fundies aren't going to play fair either.
Right.
They've always been doing the garbage with the extreme gerrymanders and everything else, and they know that the time's not on their side. So, and also things the end times are upon them, so they're going to possibly even play the state legislature theory, or otherwise probably do election fraud too.
Say that again.
They'll probably do the independent state legislature stuff
Oh, yeah.
for election fraud or whatever
Yep.
to get in by hook or crook.
I agree. They have been trying since 2020 to get rid of local officials that upheld the election and try and put in kind of some MAGA diehards that would be willing to overturn. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I am not looking forward to it. I'm not excited about this election. I won't lie.
One of the things they don't say, though, is the consequences in that they actually do want to put LGBT people in prison, and they will be really efficient about rounding up trans people, so they'll get them all, and they will also probably, in order to make them quote unquote stop doing the crime, they will surgically reverse their transitions and so on.
Right.
While they're in prison. So, I mean, they have an agenda, and people need to actually be explicit about what that is.
Right.
Because,
I also don't really get it. I don't really get it because it's not really an electoral winner. It's not really even an electoral winner with the Republican base. I mean, most Republicans outside of like the diehard sickos are not banning transgender people. This does not have an approval of Republican voters. Not to say there's not a lot of hate coming from the Republican side. There certainly is. But in polling, it's not like this top issue that's burning the Republican base. That would be immigration and some other things. I
banning abortion isn't working for their base either.
Right.
And they're the crazies are running the show.
Yep.
They are going against popular will.
I agree with you. All right. I got to go to the next caller. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. I don't know this person's name, but you're up. Norman, you're up.
Hey, Jordan.
Hey there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, So right now, since we're talking about infrastructure, one thing that the press isn't reporting is that in this moment, they're massively building out liquid natural gas infrastructure, not primarily for domestic consumption, but for exporting that LNG gas pressurized in tanker ships to Europe, especially to Germany, after they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yep.
This is a bipartisan project, right? I am very confident that we will find declassified documents going, but in the future that showed that the U.S. planned this all out years in advance. You can find video of Condoleezza Rice talking about cutting Germany's supply of Russian natural gas, right? And then even Pompeo was saying that just before he left. This is a bipartisan project to weaken Germany as the RAND Corporation leaked doc. It is a legitimate leaked document. Okay, that's why if you put it into Google, it'll tell you it's fake, but it's genuine. Okay, and in that document that was published, that was leaked a month or two before the provoked Russian invasion of Ukraine, it makes it very clear that the U.S. was planning to use the Ukraine war that it provoked to cut Germany and Europe's EU supply of natural gas and replace it. Therefore, it didn't say it in there, I don't remember, but they're replacing it with all this LNG gas from the Mountain Valley pipeline of Manchin and all these export terminal platforms. They're feverishly building right now in order to not only replace the Russian natural gas that was lower emitting, pipeline gas is lower emitting, right? You can protect for leaks better. And it's also, if you're exporting LNG gas from here, you're exporting it on ships that are burning oil, et cetera, et cetera. So it's higher emitting totally when it comes to, adding carbon and methane releases to the climate. And the war has already threatened Europe's ability to meet its climate change goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
By 2030. I mean, this is what the climatologists in Europe are saying. Because why? Because now that they don't have, Russian nat gas, Germany's going and Poland is going back to burning more coal, which is higher, CO2 emitting, right? And also, they're buying, all these countries are buying more and more oil. They're buying American oil too. Okay, we all talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve releases, but people don't realize that the oil companies bid for that oil, and they are not obligated to use that oil here. Okay, I don't know how much of that oil they are selling to Europe and making a killing.
Well, that's why I got into it with a Trump supporter a couple of weeks ago who told me that the worst thing that ever happened in America was the Dakota Access Pipeline getting shut down. And I was like, do you not realize that all that shit's going to Europe? That's not even to use here. They all are in this delusion of energy independence when I would say 60, 70% of this liquefied gas, crude oil is being sold, like you're saying, basically so we could take out Russia and other sellers at the knees and make them buy our overpriced oil.
Exactly. And here's the other thing is that they could have, Biden could have, redid the Obama deal and started importing Iranian oil and Venezuelan oil. Remember, Venezuela was one of the main suppliers of oil to this country. And it's only, like 3 days tanker ship away. And Trump completely cut all imports of Venezuelan oil, and many of the refineries were already calibrated because Venezuela crude is heavier. So it's better for certain types of usage, such as heating oil. That's why Chavez gave away free heating oil to the poor people in South Bronx and working class people in this country, which was, of course, terminated, right, with the war on Venezuela. And so, I mean, like, it's a basic supply and demand question. If you want to reduce the supply of oil, then you import more oil if it's available, right? Which it was. Like I said, Venezuelan, Iranian oil. If it weren't being sanctioned and brought online, it would automatically also reduce the price. But you already spiked the energy prices. The energy prices were spiked, obviously, by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Right, that spiked it, and then that spiked everything because every product we consume is transported, by trucks and ships and planes using, oil and gasoline, right? And so that ramified down the line, and we see that most food prices haven't gone back down again. And the gasoline prices come back down $1, right, from 2 years ago. Still too high, but nonetheless, the most of the food prices, if we look, I don't know where they're getting these inflation numbers sometimes from, because when I go to the store, a few things have come, eggs have obviously gone down, but a lot of other products are still way up there. They haven't decreased. Meat's still very expensive.
Greedflation, which the media laughed at and said was bullshit. Now all of a sudden you see articles, maybe there's something to this greedflation.
That's a great point. And so, and one thing I'd encourage you to do also is take a look at some of the oil and natural gas periodicals and newspapers and see what they're saying to each other. Because they just had their national convention down in Houston earlier this year, and Secretary Graham was there. And that's where she gave the Willow Run approval, and it was boom time for them. They've made the greatest amount of profits in the history of their business and of any business in humanity. The oil companies of America, Exxon. Okay, this is boom time. Okay, so they're not crying about some small degree, like you said before. Like by the time we shift to green energy, right, which we need to do much more faster. But by that time, the earth will be burned down. In the meantime, they're drilling like no tomorrow. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And I mean, one last point on that is like I was looking at. I saw, like, for example, Canada just got a new deposit of oil offshore of Newfoundland. Instead, so I mean, and so the head of Canada and Exxon and Equinor, Norway's #1 oil company, right? They're all licking their chops because they're getting a green light from Trudeau. I mean, there's nothing stopping them. Right? I mean, Biden wrote Exxon a letter while they were price gouging us. I mean, like, are you for real? I mean, this is a con. I mean, this is a joke. It's on us. Right?
Hey, I always bring it up. Kennedy, JFK didn't write him a fucking letter. He said, if you don't lower the prices, I'm taking your submarine contracts. And they lowered the price.
Only thing that's right. And that's the only thing that ever, causes any change on their part. But on that oil deposit, the guy from the Canadian Oil Company, the CEO, he's giggling. He's just like, this is a massive deposit. And he's like, there's 5 more of them down there offshore. There's no, like, you read these guys and you actually read what they say to each other in their own journals. There's nothing going on except them making more money than ever. Okay? That's what's going on right now. This is oil boom time and natural gas boom time. And we need to stop them.
Thanks for calling, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having Climate Defiance on. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. I got time for one more. What's your name? George, you're up.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, I just kind of want to piggyback off the last caller talking about the climate.
Mm-hmm.
Only this time I want to kind of focus in on RFK's kind of policies. And I know you've talked about it before, how he was on Breaking Points and they asked him about what he would do for climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he believed in the energy free market.
Yeah.
And I just, you've said it. I haven't heard the media talk about it. You can't stress it enough how bad of an idea that is. It's just, you're basically deregulating the energy markets and you're saying, hey, look, we're going to give the oil companies more leeway. But he believes that somehow magically the green energy is going to come out on top when oil's been in control for decades.
Bingo.
There's no evidence that they're going to just give up and let green energy take control. So I would urge people to look into the Texas power grid because that is a deregulated energy market. And if you go look at the stats, Texas is in the top 10 biggest polluters in the nation. And their energy grid shuts down during any kind of emergency weather event because with markets like that, it's a race to the bottom. Everybody's skimping on safety measures, on weatherization technologies, and in the end, it'll be you, me, all the consumers out there who will suffer if we go to a completely free energy market, and we'll be polluting more. And I think it's important for people to understand that. And, I know people focus on the vaccine stuff a lot with RFK, but there's a reason why the corporate media doesn't focus on his other policies because they actually like it. And I think at the end of the day, he's another fake populist. He's worth $80 million. He owns 10 properties. He's been in the establishment since he was born.
Yep.
He was best friends with Roger Ailes, the guy who constructed Fox News. And
I didn't even know that. I'll have to look that up. That's awful.
Listen to the Bill Maher show with him. Mm-hmm. He goes into details how he was in good friends with him. And I just feel people need to know that because I hate seeing people get swindled by people like this. It really is depressing,
Well, I think you make a good point, and that is a lot of people that the vaccine and other kooky stuff he says, that has become the main issue, but pretend for a second none of that existed and he wasn't anti-vax or any of that stuff. Then you just have another fake populist because it's not like a record of 15 years ago. You're talking like within the last 5 years, he was campaigning for Hillary Clinton. He's on tape saying, I'm a champion of the free market. He's saying, I don't, in principle, I believe in universal health care, but it's not practical, which is no different than Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, all of them. There's no there in terms of, even if you're not like a capital P progressive, there's no like leftist credentials. There's no leftist record. I would argue his father, who obviously was assassinated, was far more left than RFK Jr. And he's also, I think he's a conspiracy nut, but he's also naive. This delusion about a free market. America has never had an actual free market. It's a joke. We've had bribery, bid rigging, kickbacks, and corruption since the dawn of the railroads, and a tale of two cities, and basically speculation in markets and, Wall Street. Yes, it's been worse, I'd say, in the last 40 years, but this idea, like he seems to think if we just got rid of like the subsidies for corporations and the crony capitalism, like all would work well and the free market would be like a well-oiled machine. No, that's just BS. I think we're at a time now where you need people that are not going to say, it's not practical, but fight for what we need. I'm not like a huge fan of Marianne Williamson. I mean, I would vote for her over Biden or RFK, but at least she's saying we need X, Y, and Z. And she's saying, they would have said civil rights and the Voting Rights Act is impossible. Like she's talking about the bold things we need. Her campaign, I don't think is being run that well. I don't think she's the best candidate, but yeah, I think you're perfect. You're very right about the climate aspect and other things with him. And frankly, in most of his interviews, I don't even hear him proposing specific policies. When he's asked about specific policies, he says, well, I need to talk to economists and we need to know more about AI. It very much reminds me of Buttigieg, Beto, who are just kind of running on charm and, well, not Pete, but Beto, running on charm and kind of their looks and, vague slogans that made you feel good. At least like Cornel West will be running on policies, whether you like them or not. Marianne is running on policies. Bernie ran on policies. You didn't have to wonder what Bernie was for, whether you agreed with him or not. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of RFK. I think he's going to flame out eventually because a lot of his support is more moderates and Republicans than actual Democrats. I think he'd actually do better if he ran independent. He's not going to because obviously his family is a titan of the Democratic Party. But he probably would have done better running as an independent because I don't really see him cracking 20% in the Democratic Party. But yeah, I agree with you. With the climate inferno, the last thing you want is the free market and incentivizing corporations to save us because they do. The idea of capitalism is not to focus on the long term. It's to focus on this quarter right now.
Yeah. The free market will always be rigged.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, man.
And I had one last question for you.
Sure.
I can take it off there. What do you think about discussing climate change? Arnold said this in an interview recently, discussing it as pollution to make it a more bipartisan issue between voters on the left and the right, because climate change, global warming, they're politically charged, and a lot of people on the right immediately recoil when you bring those up. But if you focus on pollution, hey, let's cut down pollution, this is how we can cut down pollution, people are more receptive to it. So I was just wondering what you think about that.
I'll call it whatever will get more people to listen. I don't care about the term. If pollution would be more palatable for the right, absolutely. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't really think climate change, to me, is too much of a vanilla term, very similar to gentrification, which when I hear that, my eyes gloss over. In my view, gentrification is economic terrorism. That's what it is. And climate change, in my view, it's the global, it's the planet inferno. That's what it is. But if more people will be considerate, if you kind of lower the temperature, bad pun on the terms, fine. But I don't really think that's the problem. I think the problem is beyond just the climate crisis. You basically have a media complex that distracts people and makes them think the biggest threat on earth is like transgender people in sports rather than the climate crisis or homelessness or fill in your issue. Particularly right-wing media that distract us with these fucking stupid issues that don't actually affect anybody, really. Affect a very small percent of people. They concoct issues like critical race theory in schools to tap into people's fears and grievances. But I don't really think you're going to have to lower or tweak the terminology, because as it gets worse with the storms, you saw the smokes from the wildfire on the East Coast. When these conservative areas are getting it just as bad, they're going to start saying, well, maybe there's something to this. And our houses are the ones being destroyed and, et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't care about the term. I'm willing to tweak the term if it will make more people listen.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
Absolutely. I will probably do a longer call-in show either tomorrow or next week, but I do have to go play daddy and take care of my daughter. So I'll wrap up the calls with that. Sorry to anybody that was waiting. Let me read super chats. Caitlin, $5. Thank you. WWMT, local Kalamazoo area news, sponsored me an ad where they interviewed graphic packaging executives who explained they don't have a problem. You don't say. The multi-billion-dollar company poisoning Kalamazoo, particularly the black neighborhood, says there's no problem. And the media just breathlessly runs with it. Color me shocked. I'm sorry that your media is so fucking awful that you had to be played an ad. And it's really, really disgusting, the media in this country, particularly the local media, that literally just do stenography for corporate poisoners like graphic packaging. It's also disgusting when Politico and all these media networks are slobbering over Gretchen Whitmer, pumping her up. Are you ready for Gretchen? Maybe she'll run if Biden drops out, or maybe 2028. They don't seem to care, or maybe they don't even know because they're so uncritical and so lazy that she literally is helping corporate poisoners poison this community. And I'll be back in Kalamazoo at some point. Das Boot Fleiss, €5.99. I hope Ron will return as a regular guest at some point. Yeah, like I said, I mean, we're not trying not to cut ties. I told Ron we'd love to have you on. Anytime there's something you're particularly passionate about. If I could, I'd have Ron and Tina hosting and Kim hosting, but I'm not going to insult them and say, hey, can you do it for free? And obviously, we don't want people to work for free. So, Ron will definitely be here, when there's stuff he wants to talk about for sure. Tony Dallas, $5. How is Biden going to handle New Hampshire? Biden seems to get himself in a mess every chance he gets. He's not. He has said he's not going to be on the ballot in Iowa and New Hampshire if they go before South Carolina, because he tried to rig the schedule to have South Carolina first. So I don't think you're going to see Biden in Iowa or New Hampshire because he seems to think that he could just not run in either state and it'll be fine. I don't know about that. Fly Chumpify, $2. Greedflation. Yep. Damn right. Another $2. He's right. Been saying for decades, use pollution. Maybe we'll do a poll. See if more people would be receptive to that term. Thank you guys for the super chats. Thanks everybody for watching. Be back at it tomorrow. Please, 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 if you can, consider signing up as a Status Coup member. We won't have to make any more cuts. Hopefully we can bring some people back as we get our numbers back, our numbers up. So that's statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join. If you notice, we are a channel that's not focusing on personality bullshit. I have more important things to talk about and focus on than Anna Kasparian from TYT or cocaine in the White House or any of these other issues. So please, 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 if you want real reporting on the important issues that are being ignored by corporate media and most of independent media, statuscoup.com/join. Join us for $5 to $10 a month. statuscoup.com/join. It makes a big difference. If we could get our member numbers up, we could afford more on-the-ground reporting and more hosts. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.